They call her the Widow Kyle, almost like it's a title, one befitting of the woman who's worn nothing but black and kept her hair high on her head since her husband and brother were killed. A title befitting the woman who spent days on days out under the stripped branches and broken limbs of the trees where their bodies were found. This is her little kingdom. The worn-out log where she sits and looks out into the nothing is her throne. She never saw the bodies, but she can picture them. Charlie was found there, she was told. To her left, his body still twisted. The first shot, they speculated, hit him in the shoulder and spun him around so quickly that his legs faced one way and the rest of him the other. She winces when she thinks about it, feels the pain for herself, real actual pain that aches in her back and radiates to the tips of her fingers. The next shot, speculation goes, caught him in the front and slammed him to the ground. She tries not to think of his face, of it all tied up with pain. She tries not to think of his last thoughts, wondering if they were of her, wondering if they were of things he'd wished he'd said, feelings he wished he'd shared, emotions he wished he'd expressed. So, to keep from wondering all of that, she thinks of her brother. She looks just past where her Charlie was found, further left, and can still see where her brother's blood saturated the ground. The branches and the leaves stained a deep red. His body, she was told, was much more traditionally positioned. He'd been hit by 3 blaster bolts straight to the chest, one in the middle, square in the stomach, the next just a few inches above that, and the third a few inches higher, just below his throat. That means he was likely headed to help Charlie. The shots killed him almost immediately, she was assured, although she didn't know why it was thought of as an assurance. She supposed there was some comfort, really very little if she was honest, in knowing he was dead before he hit the ground. He didn't suffer while all of his blood rushed out of him. No, they hadn't let her see the bodies. The men who discovered them did her the courtesy of moving them out to the clearing. They straightened Charlie's broken body into something more recognizable, and they'd pulled a scratchy blanket over Beau's chest so she didn't have to see how badly he'd been broken. Still, there's part of her, the part that still boils with anger at the pair who did this, that wishes she could have seen her boys in that state, how they'd looked in their final moments when they left her here all alone. Here, in this place, this Makurra. She stands from the log where she spends most of her days, and goes out to the clearing where she had the men bury the bodies. She kneels in front of the simple markers she'd carved in those first days after they were gone, did it out of a log that had clearly split into 2 halves. It felt appropriate, considering how close Charlie and Beau actually were. They were more brothers than brothers-in-law. She'd tucked one of Charlie's old butchering knives into the cinch on her robe before leaving the commune, and had gone to work turning one half of the log into an anglehound facing to the right. That one would be Charlie's marker. And she turned the other half of the log into an anglehound facing left. That one was for Beau. She placed them on the ground in front of her and smiled at her work. Charlie would be proud, she thought. She cleared the ground down to the dirt and dug 2 shallow holes she placed each of the markers in, burying them a bit so no one or nothing could knock them over. Now, she kneels in front of the markers and brings her hands to her face. She chants the words she learned as a girl at the feet of her grandmother. The words that beseech the spirits that abided as guardians over the galaxy. The spirits she was told kept all of the planets in place and spinning. The spirits that she was never sure she believed in until they were all she had left. She asked them to watch over her husband. She asked them to protect her brother. And she asked them to be with her now that she feels trapped here on this planet. Then she stands and stretches her arms and looks to the sky and begins to chant more of the words her grandmother said were for grief. Words of lament that you used when you just didn't understand why things were the way they were. And right now she doesn't understand. And even though she's still not always certain she believes in these spirits, she comes out here and she asks the galaxy for answers. She begs the galaxy for some clarity, and she says a widow's goodbye to a husband she loved.